It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
What are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Hey, get away from that. Don't touch that. Unta! I can't stand those Jawas. Disgusting creatures. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. I hope your week has treated you well. Last week, I actually posted episode 785, and it was a preacher from Texas, and he had a piece of video. He had a really cool piece of video that he shot a couple weeks ago of this creature running across his farmland. Something running across his farmland, whatever it is, it's moving fast. But, you know, when I was going to do that show, I was sitting there thinking, how cool would it be, instead of hearing two guys talk about a video you guys can't even see, hear two guys talk about it for an hour, why not show it to everyone? And so I looked into it. I talked to the people who send my podcast out to all the different players, and it was my understanding, you know, this technology's been around forever, and there's no reason why, if you put it in this format, it'll play the video within the podcast player. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And so I sent it out, and because I wanted you guys to see the show and the video and everything else. And it was my understanding that most people on Spotify, nothing happened. They didn't even get a show. And so it's a little frustrating for me. And I think most podcast players should be doing this. Especially in this situation. If you're discussing a video and the guy's showing you the video, you're probably going to watch. And so I put the video up on the whole show up on the website, and I put it up on iTunes for everyone in case people came looking for the show and couldn't find it. It was there. And I'm having a lot of fun with it, with this Chronicles After Dark. It's more or less like a video production. It's very different from Sasquatch Chronicles. And so there's a huge learning curve for me. I've been living off coffee for about the last 2 weeks and watching YouTube videos of 10-year-old kids explaining to me how I need to set up this equipment. It's true. So it was frustrating for me. If you didn't get the show last week, I apologize to you. It went out. And I made mention last week about CastBox. It's a free app that I've been using for years. And CastBox isn't paying me. CastBox doesn't even know who I am. But I love their product. I've been using it for about 2 years. The reason why I like CastBox over even Apple's podcast player or Stitcher or any of them is the audio quality. I think they compress the audio at a higher rate. And I've noticed it when I go and listen to my show on my iPhone with the podcast player that comes with it. And then I'll go listen to it in CastBox. And I noticed a huge difference. The sound quality is way better on CastBox. And what's cool is it loaded the video right away. Doesn't matter if you have an iPhone, doesn't matter if you have an Android, it'll play for everything. And it loaded right up, and it was beautiful last week, but apparently not for everyone. So, what do you do? If you get a chance, check out that episode 785 with the preacher from Texas. Check out his video, and I just wanted to present it to you guys. In the future, I'm not sure if I'll do that again in the podcast format. It'll probably be a different format. I'm still moving forward with the Chronicles After Dark and putting together some really, really cool content that I've always wanted to put together. And that'll mainly be up on the website. But if you get a chance, check out CastBox. It's a cool app. I know I sound like I'm selling it. I'm really not. They're not paying me for anything. I just really like their app. But in the future, if I do something like that and I'm sending it out for everyone, I'll still put it up on the website. I'll still put it up on YouTube, and I'll still put it up in as many formats as I can. Thank you again for being here. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Wade to the show. Wade, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Wes. Thank you.
Yeah, Wade, I'm really fascinated by your account. I know it happened in Rainier, Oregon, and this is the early 70s. If you would, tell us about what some of the things that you started noticing after you and your family moved in on this property. What were some of the strange things that you started noticing right away?
Yeah, we were fresh from Southern California, and we were all tan and blonde and, very optimistic. And we moved into this awful single wide trailer that hadn't been lived in obviously years. And right out of the gate, unusual things were happening. Of course, we took this in all stride because we'd never been in that kind of living situation in the forest. We were all city kids. So everything was new. And there was a lot of mystery to it. And Mom and Dad got into the swing of the things, like a Green Acres kind of thing. They got goats, they got chickens and that whole smear. And there was always lots of sounds in the woods that, like, what in the world is that? I don't know. I had to ask them. Sometimes Dad even said, I'm not sure. And of course, he was the oracle of all things cool, and I had to ask him. And animals would disappear. We had found the goats, well, what was left of them. Eventually, the very last goat in a tree, of all places. And, of course, in my young mind at the time, I was 10. And, I thought, okay, and they didn't even explain it to me. But certainly my dad and Mom and my oldest brother and sister, they knew. And the overarching thrust here is that I didn't have any fear because Mom and Dad said there was no reason to fear. And I never really was the first couple of years of all these unknown things. And we would clean the place up like we had to. And one afternoon we were cleaning the vines off the side of the house, which was extensive. There were the vine patches there, and strawberry and briar patches were laughable. It's ridiculous. And the side of this single wide old trailer was just, it was pounded, and I thought, what in the world? As a kid, I said, Dad, what happened here? Who would do this to their home? And he, of course, said, well, must be where they stacked their firewood for the year. But it was from, all the way to the top of this single wide trailer that was really actually tall. It was sitting on the foundation. And just again and again and again, that these things would pop up. And, Dad was the kind of man where he didn't like to see his family frightened. So they logically had to become professional liars to keep us, from being scared. We would ask where the animals went. No real answer until we started finding what was left of the animals. And they were, if you could literally just grab some of these animals from one end to the next and just pull, that's, they weren't like chewed on.
Yeah, that's terrifying. So they weren't chewed on; they were basically torn apart. And I know from what you and I were talking about earlier, God, I imagine as a 10-year-old boy that would terrify you. Before you go on, I want to ask you a quick question. You talked about the trailer being pounded on. Did it look like fists were pounding on it?
They were very big. They were very big indentations. As if you would see a vehicle or a building or something that had gone through a hailstorm, but this was consistent 3/4 of the way down this thing to even the very top of it. And of course, my young mind, I couldn't even hazard a guess. I just said, "Okay, Dad, let's finish cleaning up. Let's keep going." And your dad says something, you don't question it. You just say, "Sure, okay, Pop." And Mom, the place was in such bad shape. Mom took literally the rotten curtains down from every window, the sliding glass door, everything. It was just, even took the carpet out of this place. And so we started hearing things at night that were extremely loud, extremely close. And there was more than once where Dad got off work, and it's slam dark. It's hard to describe to people how dark and quiet it is there. And he had come in that door rapidly. And of course, now I know what was happening to him. The girls seen these things first. There was at least 4 of them. They would literally, these animals, man, they're animals. That's everything they did. They're just, and I was told that they were just animals. They would just walk right up to the windows. And I didn't see them right away. The girls always seen them probably because they were scared. And 3 of them would randomly get up, scream, and run out of the room. And I would just join them and wouldn't understand why we're running and screaming, right? And this went on for some time, and it got worse. And then very loud bangs would happen. They would beat on things. The porch would start banging. The back of this, just the very back, where not the place where we cleared off the vines, would just bang. Shook this old crummy single wide. So we made plans and we followed through. Dad had cleared off clearing up the hill a little bit more and got a new double wide, really nice trailer in. We thought, okay, this is pretty cool. Dad moved in the men that worked for him, because he was one of the bigwigs out there at that nuke plant, into this trailer. And he knew that there was trouble. And he'd asked these men that would come stay. He says, "I'm not going to charge you a dime, but you," and Dad used a lot of profanity, but he goes, I need you to air these things out. And these were not academic people. These were some of the toughest hombres you would ever meet. These steam fitters, boiler makers, pipe fitters. The winters there in Rainier were unbelievable. And these guys worked out in it. And they were always around. They were always friendly, big, tough guys. And Dad started harvesting the timber. And as soon as he started harvesting the timber on this land, they came out. They had no fear of us at first. They would just come out of the wood line and just stand there. There was 2 smaller ones Well, how small is, they were huge, but they were like almost identical. And then there was a much larger one, and she was like I don't know, I don't know what it was. She was like a blocky kind of like a Flintstone character. It was cartoonish, but the very largest one was I can't think of a single animal that you would compare it to. I can't think of a single one, but he was the problem. He was the problem. He would run by the place, and you could hear it coming. The footsteps that this animal was, and it was regular. These animals made themselves known until they started getting shot at. Everything that Dad did on the land, and everybody that Dad brought up there on that hill had problems with these animals. From the 3 men that came up that drilled the water well for the new place, they would yell at Dad. They left twice on purpose. I remember them yelling at my dad, and my dad yelling back at them. And they're yelling at him, saying, "Hey, you got to get a handle on these damn animals, Dean."
Yeah, and I know we're just now starting to get into what happened, but what were some of the things that the creatures were doing?
It was, of all things, it was like property damage. They would damage things all the way from, they'd throw stuff around. They'd just throw stuff around, and if they couldn't throw it around, they would pummel it. Like, you're like, what in the world? Even Dad bought these timber fallers all new chainsaws, because they would do a thing, and I don't know, it was a thing for them. They would leave their saws there on site wherever they were, and they'd run a chain around a tree and through the saws, through the handles. And he bought them new saws. He always boastfully said, "Yes, Sue, I'll even put you in a white vinyl picket fence in the whole Marianne to the new place." And they pummeled that into the ground like it would take a truck to flatten out. And it draws me to that night where the large one was standing by the brand new pump house that Dad and his buddy had built. And it's a pretty good size one. And it's still there. It's like a 10 by 10, typical 8 feet tall. Well, the large one, and there was a light on this one, and it was the only light out in front at the time. Dad seen this thing. I didn't see it. And we knew when Dad comes stomping through the house from his gun case, it's on. And he opened the big front window where the couch is, and he literally put he didn't want to wait. Put that rifle through the screen. And that's what kind of surprised me, because I knew he was pissed. And he shot this thing, Wes. I seen it as clear as I'm looking down at one of my vehicles right now. And like in the left shoulder area, you can see things fly off this animal on this, like his left shoulder clearly. And it spun around before that stuff in the air even stopped flying, and it was gone. So they got even more verbal. About 3 times a week, you would hear them, and they all sounded, some would be howling, and the other ones would be, at least one of them would be like a roar. Like the only sound I can kind of compare it to is when I was in Florida for a short time. Like if you heard an alligator grumble, bellow, but only much more, obviously. And I was never afraid, because I'd look at my dad and just say, "Well, that's, what in the world is that?" And he'd always, say, "Don't worry about it, little buddy. They're just animals, and we'll take care of them. And there's a lot of good men up here, and there's nothing to worry about." And that was it. You took, because your dad was He was this 5-foot tall pipe fitter that resembled Yosemite Sam. He was a Korean War veteran. Just a tough guy. You're like, okay, Pop, sure, and that was it.
Can I ask you, Wade, after your dad shot the creature, did they ever become violent, and did things ramp up?
They got what they got is I don't care what you see on TV of these four-legged animals running fast. You're like, yeah, you need some more steam there, bud. These things got fast, for lack of a better word. They would come out of the wood line and immediately take off. And it's just like, nothing is that fast. There's nothing that these things couldn't outrun. And all four of them, it didn't matter, the two smaller ones, the mid-sized one and the bigger one, and they would crawl. I think it just because Dad purposely let the grass grow between the new double wide and this old barn. And you would be walking towards the barn and you'd come across this beat down path. And man, it was like 8 feet wide and just pounded down. And I remember my oldest brother, Dean, saying to my dad, I won't use profanity, he says, they're crawling. And of course, Dad says, come on, la, 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 la. And he goes, no, Dad, I'm not making this up. They're crawling. And he goes, okay, well, that's new as well. But these things, after Dad shot the larger one, they wouldn't just meander like the first time I seen the larger one. They were running, literally running in this, it's like, that figure, Flat Stanley, that one cartoonish kind of thing. And you would take Flat Stanley everywhere you went and take a picture of him. Well, imagine like taking a flat paper cutout and hardly moving it like it wasn't articulate and just zapping across from point A to point B. It was uncanny. It was uncanny, but they would start running everywhere they went.
Yeah, they didn't want to get shot. They were in harm's way. Now, I know when you and I were talking last night, you were talking about when you first saw them, they would just kind of come out of the wood line and meander and kind of look at everything. And now they're dodging bullets. And so they're a little bit more leery. And I want to get into the creature's appearance because it sounds like a family group is on the property. And I'm very curious about the appearance. Before we get into appearances of the creature, what are some other things that happened on the property?
Well, it's just 3 years worth of like a collage of small things called small things that happened, but it was so consistent. Like in the beginning, they just walk up to the window and look through. And they're hideous, and each face on all four of them are different. They started getting, not a single one of them ever like came out of the woods and ran right at us. But it got to the point 2 years later, it was been a couple of years now, where Mom had enough. And Mom was a cardiac patient. We all knew not to startle Mom. So Dad informed us one night that Mom and the girls are going to leave to Washington State. And the very next day they did. And that day that they left, that evening, Dad got my brother and I, and it was 4 guys living in that place down there. And Al, the old man that Dad bought the land from. And of course he was a Marine, and that's how he sounded. He says, all right, girls are gone. It's open season. Whatever it takes to take these damn things out, because it caused him a lot of heartache. He wanted to continue to harvest the timber, and the timber fallers were They would talk to the pipe fitters saying, hey, can you guys come down and just hang out while we're there? And a couple of you can stay up here at the property and still fulfill your obligation. And I think they did. I don't see why not. But these things got fast, and that was a game changer because you didn't know these things could be on you, and you didn't even know that they were there. And that went on for another year. They got loud, they got bold, very matter of fact, and they never pounded on the side of the new place. We could see their tracks that they left everywhere. They were as common as it's not a surprise. There was a lot of people by the end of that third year, from all those timber fallers, the well drillers, I think the power company that came and hooked up the power pole and all that stuff, the police department, the rangers, all those pipe fitters, all those tradesmen that stayed at that single wide thing. There was a lot of people in the know by the end of the third year. And these were stone-faced, dead level solid people when they were talking about these animals and the overarching importance to the land of it. And as far as everybody was concerned that I'm aware of, was the timber. This was hundreds of old growth that I was aware of. And everybody kind of in that small town at the time, everybody got a piece of that, but it was important to harvest that timber. It was in everybody's best interest. And that's why everybody kind of cooperated. But there was that a few months before we had that nuke plant was finished, and Dad was standing in the front driveway, and he was looking at somebody from the forestry department, and I believe one of the police officers from down the hill. And he's looking up at him with his finger and yelling profanities at these men, saying, I don't give a, who you are or what you want done. This is my family, this is my land, and I'll do as I damn please. But he says, they're going to die if I can possibly get the chance. And because you didn't tell my dad what to do. He wasn't one of those men that you could show up on his land and tell him how it was going to be.
Did the men show up to tell your dad specifically to stop shooting at these creatures?
Yes. They weren't talking about anything else. And so that's going on like 6 months where I was told point blank, these are animals. They are dangerous. As you're aware of, they can get you. And these two men showed up. And this was after like 2.5 years of a lot of bullswa, and Dad had just, you're not going to show up and threaten that guy saying he can't do that or anymore.
Yeah, it's strange when they show up to tell you don't shoot at a creature that supposedly doesn't exist. And I know you're a newer listener to the show, Wade, and there's a reason why I'm asking you this. The two guys that showed up, do you remember what agencies they were with, or do you remember what they looked like?
Yeah, it's funny. One guy was wearing, and it's funny how they dressed back then. Geez, if you've ever seen that movie Apollo 13, and you can see them all these men in white short sleeve shirts and polyester pants and greasy black hair or flat. That's how the one guy looked. But the forestry department guy was he was every big and tough and gruff and unshaven as a lot of those pipe fitters that stayed in Dad's trailer down there, and he was the most verbal. He kept looking down at Dad and just saying, this is how this is how it's going to be. And of course, Dad was pointing back at him, yelling profanity. But the guy with the short white shirt and the big, thick black frame glasses, he was calm, and he would say, "Look, Dean, please be reasonable. Meet us halfway across the street on this one." And Dad would tell him to, go jump in the lake as well. The man in a white shirt was calm and really articulate.
Yeah, it's strange. And I know that you're kind of a newer listener. I don't know if you've gotten to any of those shows or not. But for a period of time, I really looked into these two guys that show up, and I really don't know what to make of it. What's strange, though, is their appearance and the way they behave doesn't change. It doesn't change at all throughout the years. Someone from the 60s who shot one of these creatures describes a guy from the forestry department showing up. He has a beard, and he's kind of a rough-looking guy, and he's really mouthy when he shows up. The other guy claims he's a cop. He's, dressed very professional, and he's very polite. It's almost like good cop, bad cop shows up. But what's weird about it is their appearance doesn't change and their behavior doesn't change. I just don't know what to make of it.
Well, this, I recognized the vehicle because there was only one vehicle, and it was from, I recognized the emblem on the side of the vehicle, and they both came in the same vehicle. And that's why I didn't think twice about it once I walked out the door. But I didn't recognize either one of the men. But I recognized the vehicle. I'm like, oh, okay, no big deal. And didn't think twice about it till I round the corner, and there they were standing there yelling at each other. And it did not go those two men's way. It did not. There was at least maybe another half of year, and everything just kept up. We couldn't. There was from the double wide up to the main drag. On one side, the trees were right up against that road because that road had to be cut in. And we were never able to just walk up there and get the mail or take the trash up there because that we could, Dad said you could get, what do you call it? Bum rushed and not see him because there was a pretty good clearing around the double wide, at least by a couple 100 feet all the way around this thing easily, if not more. But those two guys, they talked to the two people across the street. I don't know what they said to them, but the truck was in their driveway. And we knew that for sure because Dad immediately said, well, let's go down and get some beer. And we stopped at the top of this driveway, and they went from one place. There was nobody home. Then they went to the next place. Those two people were nice in those houses. And you'd see them maybe once a month, and you'd smile and wave. They were very nice. They never came out at night at all. You would never see them out, and it kind of makes sense. The behaviors of the adults kind of fell deaf on me a little bit because even Belle down in this homemade cabin that was just ridiculous. And I'm standing right next to my mother, and my mother was asking Belle, if you see this one, and she's pointing down at me, and she goes, can you make sure he runs back up to the house? And Belle had this huge, like 5-gallon mason jar full of these lemon drops that I really loved. And she goes, oh, don't worry, I got his attention. And she would always give me these candies. And
yeah, and I'm getting a little bit of feedback, Wade. I don't know if I'm getting a bunch of wind coming through, and that's okay. I'm just giving you a heads up on it. And so those were your neighbors that you were talking about, and it is strange when people have these things on their property. They'll often describe that, my neighbors, no one seems to go out at night, or as soon as the sun goes down, everyone's inside until they figure out why. One of the questions I want to ask you, so there was 4 of these creatures. Would you kind of describe each one of them?
Well, the largest one was the most bold. He was kind of like if you had a really wide, round face and you made the lips kind of large and these huge black eyes, and you just kind of pulled it down. That's what he kind of looked like. The two of the smallest ones looked like I guess they would close to look like just your regular monkeys, like chimpanzees. There was a little bit of difference, but they both had their eyes on all four animals. Their eyes are larger. The large blocky one, the second to the largest, they're just ugly. They're just ugly, and I can visualize them. She had a lot of hair. She had a really round, or I don't know if she or he had a really round face, really wide lips, and they all looked a little bit different from one another. But the large male was just hideous. And then you look over at the window, and there's their face right up, pretty much just touching the window. I have no doubt now that they could see us as clear as we could see them in the daytime if it was nighttime. The two smaller ones, they were, you could see they would like move more. They wouldn't be, because none of them moved their faces. But the two smaller ones, they would like move their head and shoulders a little bit, and you can see their eyes move left and right, just as clear as a bell. So they were like curious, what's going on in that beatable single wide trailer, and because they know when they did that, all the people inside would go running and screaming. I don't know what that means, but they were all very just hideous looking. There's a place here in Central Oregon, and it's called the Day Ranch, and you can go see these monkeys that these people take in, and they all look the same, and they're all like clones, but not these four animals. They were all not dramatically. They all looked different.
Yeah, Wade, and I know your opinion is that it's an animal, and I respect your opinion. And so this might seem like a ridiculous question, but did they appear to be more animal-like, or did they appear to be more man-like?
No, these were very animal-like. The only thing, I guess, human about them is just that they had, nostrils, a mouth, and eyeballs. Then nothing about these animals said human at all. None of their attributes, other than having a torso, a head, arms, and body, telling me that these are human. They're not human. These were something else. Nothing moves that fast. No human, no animal that I could think of. And they're doing it on purpose. They know that we're seeing them. We stand out on a deck. Here they come, at least one of them, and they would take off and run the tree line. You're like, what in the world? You couldn't get a shot on one of them when they're on the move. That's not going to happen. That's not an option.
Yeah, I hear you. One thing I want to ask you, Wade, you keep using the word hideous when you are describing these creatures. And it's not that I don't disagree with you by any means. I think you're actually spot on. But for the audience who's maybe never seen one, can you define that? What do you mean when you say that they're hideous?
Well, they're everything was out of proportion. Their mouths were obviously big. Their nostrils are up a little bit and huge. All their eyes were huge black eyes. Their foreheads were enormous. They didn't have ears like a dog, or they're not floppy or pointed. They were like stubs on each side of their head. They're I don't know if it was fur or hair or whatever it was. They were all a little bit different colored, except the largest one. He was kind of reddish, and we got a darn good look at him. These were ugly. These are very spooky, ugly animals that were, it seemed unnatural, but they were very physical thing. So it's just like if you could draw a monster to scare people, that would get it done. Especially the largest one, he was the ugliest. It's like if you took a really big face and just made everything extra large, and then just made it kind of saggy. That was him, and he never had any expression on his face. He hardly ever moved, like when he was at the window, or we'd see him in a roof line, or standing at the corner of the double wide, or wherever we would see him. He'd never. But the two smaller ones would kind of move a little bit, and you can see their eyes move.
Yeah, I feel for you, Wade. Growing up as a kid, and you got to grow up around these things. I know it went on for 3 years, but, when you're 10, 3 years might as well be a lifetime. I wanted to ask you, after, this was well over 40 years ago, have you been back to the property?
I did, and for all the right reasons, at least at the time, I thought. I got a new motorcycle, like I always do. I like to take long trips. And I thought, what the heck? I'll go north from where I lived. And I went there unannounced to that place specifically. And it changed a lot, obviously. And there was two bachelors that were living in this place. And of course, I'm a stranger. I said, hi, I'm, John Smith, and back in the day, we moved from California and moved here, and we lived in that place there, and Dad put in this place, and we started harvesting timber, and the nuke plant was done, and we moved off, and as soon as I said the words, my dad put this place in and started harvesting timber, their faces changed, and these are mature men. These are 65 year at least. Their whole demeanor changed, and they looked at each other, and they started looking down, looking around, and that whole mood changed. Like, you're no longer just being friendly to a stranger. And that's when I knew that they were still having trouble there. The place was just beat. It was beat up. It was more than just weathered. So I didn't talk a heck of a lot more, but they knew. You can tell from my profession, I deal with a lot of people spending a lot of money, very serious contracts. And so I can tell human behavior, like, yeah, don't you? So it's kind of funny though, even to this day. Well, I don't know, maybe it's just human behavior. Haven't talked to a shrink or anything. I still don't feel this fear that you would think that you would. Even when I watch scary movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, those kind of, or, any kind of scary movie, or read a scary Dean Koontz book or anything, that comes in like a laughable second. It doesn't just like, yeah, whatever, and you give it the slow clap because it's laughable, and that's not scary. You want scary? I know scary.
Yeah, I get it, man. I mean, Dean Koontz isn't going to write a horror novel that's going to terrify you when you have these things on your property. And, it's crazy at such a young age that you were exposed to this. One thing I normally ask everyone on the show, what do you think Sasquatch is? And there's no wrong answer because no one really knows. And I know throughout just listening to you that it's an animal in your head, and there's nothing wrong with that. And you could be right. But would you define that a little bit more?
I think it's a unique thing. I think it's a completely unique animal. It's not, I don't know what they call those specific monkeys. It's certainly not like one of us, Homo sapien. Whatever they are, they're completely unique and their own thing. They're not stupid. They had any a schoolboy can tell that they have a learned behaviors on how they conducted themselves, how they acted. It was repetitive. It was predictable. So they're not just like some dumb scavenging animal. These animals had it together. And if you go after one of these things, you're going to die. There's, especially the large one, there, if the things that they did, and as fast as they are, clearly, you go ahead and jump in your vehicle. It's not gonna make any difference. They were starting to be shot at on the land out of desperation, not just greed for the temper. So when I'm get back to it, they're their own thing, whatever they are. If they are hassling your family for a long period of time, just like any other animal, they need to be taken care of one way or the other. But they're not to be messed with. You can't just walk out in the woods and say, "Hey, stand still while I take a picture." It's not one of those kind of deals. They started getting shot at on the regular. They had no fear of us. And if they don't feel we're human beings, we're awful. We're the worst things on the planet. And if they're not afraid of us, then gee whiz, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what a way for you to grow up. Growing up is hard enough, and now you have these things on your property and you're dealing with it. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. No one really wants to deal with them. But in the same breath, you were in an opportunity. You had this great opportunity to watch what they do. Why do they do what they do? What do they look like? It's a blessing and a curse for sure. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on. Yeah, I know it's something very personal happened to you and your family. And I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. I really enjoyed talking with you, Wade.
Thank you, Wes, and you have a good evening.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. If you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Until next time, everyone.